Sometimes, evil wears a familiar face. You could be standing next to it in a crowd, walking past it on the street, or even shaking hands with it, and never know. But behind the smile, behind the charm, something terrifying lurks in the shadows. This is the story of Ted Bundy, a man whose name sends shivers down spines even today. He wasn't the monster hiding under your bed. He was the one sitting right next to you, blending in with the world while secretly harboring sinister intentions. In the 1970s, Bundy's handsome looks and disarming smile were enough to earn the trust of dozens of young women. Little did they know, they were walking straight into a nightmare that would claim the lives of at least 30 victims, though in reality, we may never know just how many souls he took. Tonight, we dive into the chilling life of one of America's most infamous criminals, a man whose violent spree left a trail of fear across the country, and a name forever etched into the history of horror. This is the twisted story of Ted Bundy. Monsters are not born, they are made. And in the case of Ted Bundy, the seeds of darkness were planted early. Born on November 24, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, Bundy entered the world surrounded by secrets. His mother was unwed, and to avoid shame, Bundy was raised to believe that his grandparents were his parents, and that his mother was his older sister. This web of lies would haunt him, creating an emotional void that he would one day fill with something far more sinister. Even as a child, there were disturbing glimpses into what would become a full-fledged monster. Young Ted was quiet, withdrawn, but underneath that calm surface, a storm was brewing. He began sneaking into people's homes, stealing things, peering through windows, early signs of his need to control and violate boundaries. But it wasn't until his teenage years that his twisted fantasies began to take form. Bundy felt different, disconnected from the world, and that alienation grew deeper when his first love, Stephanie Brooks, ended their relationship. She was beautiful, intelligent, everything Ted wanted, and when she left him, something inside him broke. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was the beginning of a much darker path, a path that would lead to tragedy. By 1974, Ted Bundy's dark desires had fully surfaced. Behind his charming smile and soft-spoken nature lurked a man who had become skilled at hunting in plain sight. Bundy didn't need weapons to lure his victims. All he needed was a fake injury, a pair of crutches, or a friendly voice asking for help. Once he had their trust, once they were close enough, his true nature would reveal itself. And they would never escape. His targets were carefully chosen, young, vulnerable women, many resembling his lost love, Stephanie. Long-haired brunettes with a center part, girls who had no idea that the man offering a helping hand was hiding a terrifying secret. Bundy's actions were cruel, calculated, and relentless. He would often strike with sudden violence, leaving his victims powerless. But that was only the beginning. What happened afterward is too disturbing to imagine. Bundy wasn't just a criminal. He was someone who sought control in the most chilling way possible. As he moved from state to state, Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, his appetite for destruction grew. With each incident, he became more confident, more ruthless, and more elusive. The authorities were left struggling to connect the dots as Bundy continued his spree undetected. In 1975, it seemed like Ted Bundy's luck had run out. He was arrested in Utah after a routine traffic stop, which led to the discovery of suspicious items in his car. But at that point, the police didn't realize they had just captured one of the most wanted men in America. As investigators began to connect him to multiple disappearances, Bundy's calm facade started to crack. But even after his capture, Ted Bundy wasn't ready to face justice. Not yet. In June 1977, he made a daring escape, leaping from a second-story courthouse window and disappearing into the woods. He was free for 6 days before being recaptured. But that was just the beginning. In December 1977, Bundy did it again. This time, he broke out of his jail cell and fled to Florida. Free once more, he resumed his deadly ways. Within weeks, Bundy committed one of the most horrifying attacks of his life. The Chi Omega murders. Bundy crept into a Florida State University sorority house in the dead of night. In a matter of minutes, he took the lives of 2 young women and attacked 2 others, leaving a scene of terror in his wake. But even that wasn't enough to satisfy his violent urges. His final victim would be a 12-year-old girl named Kimberly Leach, whose tragic fate would ultimately lead to Bundy's capture. Ted Bundy's final arrest brought an end to his terror, but his trial was only the beginning of another chapter, one that would play out on national television. For the first time, a murder trial was broadcast live, and Ted Bundy, ever the narcissist, made sure all eyes were on him. Bundy represented himself in court, turning the trial into a bizarre spectacle. He smiled, flirted with the press, and even proposed to his girlfriend during the proceedings. But beneath that charm, the evidence against him was mounting: eyewitnesses and forensic evidence that left no doubt about his guilt. In 1979, Bundy was found guilty of the Chi Omega murders and sentenced to death by electric chair. But even after the verdict, Bundy maintained his innocence, drawing out the legal process and prolonging the suffering of the victims' families. What drove Ted Bundy to commit such horrifying acts? Some say it was a deep-seated resentment. Others believe it was a thirst for control. But one thing is certain: Bundy was a master manipulator. He had the ability to charm those around him, to make them believe he was a normal, even likable person. But behind that facade was someone who saw his victims as objects, something to be controlled and discarded. Bundy once described his actions as the ultimate possession. He believed that by taking lives, he could keep a piece of his victims forever. This chilling insight into Bundy's mind reveals a person devoid of empathy, someone who found pleasure in dominating and controlling others. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was finally put to death in Florida's electric chair. Outside the prison, hundreds of people gathered to celebrate the end of his reign, chanting, "Burn, Bundy, burn." But even in death, Bundy's legacy continues to cast a long, dark shadow over America. His name has become synonymous with evil, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying threats don't look like monsters. They look like the person standing next to you. Ted Bundy's story is one of deception, manipulation, and cruelty, and it remains one of the darkest chapters in American history. Ted Bundy left behind a legacy of fear and sorrow. His crimes may have ended with his execution, but the echoes of his evil continue to haunt us. His story serves as a warning. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like the boy next door. Thank you for watching. If this story gave you chills, be sure to like and subscribe for more true crime content. Stay safe and stay vigilant.